Say you're unemployed and you're concerned about either a job gap or the amount of experience that you have. It's not as difficult as it seems to bridge that gap, so let's talk about it. Welcome everyone to Outsider Information. I am your host Brandon and your strategic partner here with OIAS. As always, if anything resonates, like, subscribe, engage. It is a Monday. I record these in advance before I get them up on Tuesday, but it is a victory Monday because the Jets won their first game of the season, which means it's going to be a great week. We can all feel a little bit happier as Jets fans. All right. Drink of the episode is a tea that I borrowed off of my wife. Never had it. She raves about it, and we are going to we are not going to ever understand why. That is not delicious. Okay, moving on from that. Last week's episode was how to identify a good and a bad job, or a good or a bad job. And through questions, through looking at the job description, things that maybe would warrant further exploration. A few weeks, maybe a month ago, I did a staying sane during the job search process episode. This is going to land somewhere in between both of those. If you are being picky, so let's say you took last week's episode to heart, you might be waiting a bit. And that's really not that different than anything with the current job search process. It just takes time. But if you are prioritizing fit, then it's going to take a little bit more time. If you are a younger worker, maybe someone who is trying to get experience, that is going to be an additional barrier for you. So this episode is really aimed towards anybody who might be looking in any context. Right or wrong, job gaps are held against you. If you are not working and that time drags on, people are going to ask questions, fair or unfair. Your past or lack thereof is also held against you, which again, fair or unfair. I kind of relate it to like credit cards and bank loans. You can't be given money unless they feel like they can trust you, but the only way that they can trust you is to put yourself in crippling debt, pay a bunch of extra money on interest, and then they will be like, okay, you can have this house. Really backward system. And while it's not the exact same with work, there are a ton of barriers towards getting the things that you want. So we are going to try our best to mitigate those. But we have to ask a question. How are we quantifying experience? And it's usually either educational or applied, practical experience in that sense. You're talking to somebody that believes education should count towards accrued experience after a certain point, right? I would say certainly the latter parts of your undergrad, maybe where you're doing some capstone projects, and certainly master's programs, and absolutely if you're in a doctoral program. Grad school is elective, and if you are doing that, that is certainly applied expertise. The gaps, though, certainly in colleges, and I'll say high school, is they have their curriculums, they have the things they want you to have, and it doesn't necessarily translate to the next level. High school doesn't always translate to college. College doesn't always translate to the work that you are going to be doing. But there's no experience like applied experience because it's translatable and it's attractive. It's also relatable, which education just is not, because everyone has different experiences with their education. So the big issue is subjective understanding and relatability. And how do you bridge that gap? People always say go to networking events, but those can be kind of tiring, right? I go to a ton of different business networking events, and being on all the time like that isn't as fun as you think. And also, it's not going to get you the results that you think because you're going to probably be going into it with a different mindset. The way to bridge that gap is to essentially create the experience that you have on your own. We are at the whim of all the opportunities that are available. If it's out there, we can apply to it. If it's not, then what do? We create them, and that is where we want to start. From a personal point, as a consultant, every interaction is essentially an audition, right? I'm not trying to get business from everybody that I talk to, but when I wrote an article maybe a month plus ago about networking, you're playing a social lottery and you just don't know which ticket is going to hit off. That person that you really clicked with could be a business partner down the road. It could be somebody you're working with, but it starts somewhere, and you have to essentially put yourself in the framework that everything is an audition. No different than any other interaction, but that is just how I have thought about it as I go out to different events. But to give a direct example, say you are in marketing. That was the most relatable one I could think about with this. Your portfolio matters. It's about proof over concept. People want to see what it's going to do. I don't advocate giving away any service for free, but if you're in a really competitive field and you're trying to break through, where's your niche? How can you find a way in? Everyone needs marketing. What I've seen, certainly doing what I do, is a lot of people really good at building a business, terrible at everything that relates to people. So what about doing a trial project for a small business, a nonprofit, or a startup? I have found myself doing stuff like that as well, where you're not really investing too much of your time, but you are getting something back in the sense that you get clear control over your service. It's low risk for all. Best case scenario, they're going to want you to do more work, and this time it's going to be paid. Worst case scenario, you get a reference point or maybe some sort of a business review. It's like a combination of freelance and volunteering, except you're getting a professional, tangible piece of proof that you can use as you are looking for the next thing that you want. It also shows that you are active in the field or in the work that you are doing. You are still learning. So while the big thing about that job gap that people say is like, well, did your skills erode? It doesn't really quite happen like that, but to mitigate that thought, do stuff that potentially would directly apply. And it's cross-application. Marketing is the example that I used, but there are plenty of areas that you could apply that. It could also provide a template for future work. While I have been marketing and branding the consulting stuff really the way I've been doing for the last 6 months, it's been up and running for 2 years because I built the shell of it way back in 2023 while I was still in school in the event that I would be using it to do this. So it's all there. Is it ideal? No. But in a game that is rigged for you to lose, and in this case the job search process, give yourself an advantage. And there are a lot of pathways to do this. I attend a group on Fridays, a couple times a month, called Fundraising Fridays. It's a bunch of people working in nonprofits, trying to start their own nonprofits, all of which are trying to find their own edge. If you have something that you could potentially offer a group that's very low risk like this, never know where it's going to lead, right? People remember good quality work, and people also remember things that feel comfortable to them, and it could be a pathway in. If you don't have any experience at all, this is also a great place to start for a biz and potentially a worker. As an employer, this is advantageous if somebody doesn't have experience. And I've said this plenty of times. You get to teach somebody what you want, how you want it done. And if you do that to the right individual, not only are you shaping somebody's habits, but you are also potentially getting something to the T of what it is that you are hoping to get out of any sort of engagement. And overall, if we're talking about something like this, where you're just giving your time, in a sense, professionally, we're talking, 5 hours a week? If you're spending all this time applying for other things, 5 hours a week will probably just give you a nice little break out of everything. Okay, so there's that. How about true volunteering? I love this because you've got a ton of flexibility here, and similar to everyone before, everyone likes free, all right? But here you can pick the causes that you like. There's even specific industry events, conferences that you can volunteer for. I have volunteered at a biotech event because, look, if I was there, I was outside the industry, they gave me free food. I said, well, I can give you a little bit of time back. I can help you out with whatever you're going to do next. And I've made some good connections, good contacts as a result, right? You become visible. You get to see it from a different perspective. You could open the door to different events. You may meet some people who are in an industry that you want to go into, a different industry that you might want to go into. References, connections, sanity. Going back to that sanity piece, people meet people. And if you are networking all the time, that feels very transactional. If you are giving your time to a cause that you want to give it to, that can be fun. And you get to do something that you actually enjoy on top of staying a little bit active in a space that you feel comfortable with. It can be directly applicable as well. Organizing, budgeting, logistics, all of those things that are buzzwords for a resume can pop right off, and it can show you that you are, or show the people that you're trying to get employed with that you have been doing relevant work up to that point. It's just, you enjoy it and you're not getting paid for it. The thing here is it could also be a pathway towards board membership. A lot of nonprofits have volunteer boards, and if you're talking about getting something that pops on a resume, that could certainly be it. Everyone loves a little bit of influence, whether they are paid or unpaid. Having that can pop. You can also keep doing it, right? If you are just doing this in your free time, you're going to have more of it. And if you really like the cause, you can keep volunteering. Lots of organizations to pick from. You get some perks. They give you some free food, shirts. Contributing to the common good. I feel like there's not enough of that, but it's exposure to something different. And again, maybe it gives you an opportunity to look at potentially changing something. You get a lot of control here, and you can volunteer in a plethora of industries across just an entire spectrum. Okay. The last one is just create your own projects. And I could say in part, that's what a lot of this podcast, the social media, the articles are. It's a digital log of my work, expertise, and the messaging. It's very basic. It's no frills, but it's consistent. People pretty much know when to check for stuff. I post a couple times a week on social media. I do the podcast on Tuesdays, mostly. And if I do an article, it's usually Mondays, Fridays, or both, right? So people know when and where to look for it, even if you don't have a massive following. I have the control. I get to talk about what I like and what I do and what I would hope to do. And it translates to the work that I keep on doing. So is it experience? If it is, how so? Well, definitely there's a bunch of research that goes into the topics that I do, certainly the articles. And if you have a platform, you actually built it. At one point, there were people who were co-producing stuff on here. We just kind of had this volunteer thing going, and I kind of ceased it back in 2024. But that type of stuff does translate into the actual work that you're doing. And you really never know what's going to catch somebody's eye because everyone's just looking for stuff, right? People are just looking for things. And if it's interesting, people will follow it and they will keep coming back. This can work in many contexts. If you're academic, go participate in research. Be on somebody's committee or chair for their research. Do speaking engagements, maybe host an event or a mixer where people are going to come and participate. If you're going to do a podcast, write on your expertise, put the research in and brand yourself that way. Create some tangible work samples like people are doing on social media. A lot of creatives, cake decorators, florists are putting their work on social media, and that is the easiest way to get seen. Doesn't hurt, right? Doesn't cost you anything, and you get to keep all the control because we live in a digital world. You know your space well. What is attractive to the people that potentially would be looking at your stuff? Use any opportunity as a journey of learning, right? If you've got downtime and you're looking for work, it is stressful. I get that. I've been there in the past. But if you come out on the other side of it, having learned something, you're going to be better at the job that you do. You're not going to just be thankful for the new opportunity. You're going to be really ready for it. And I think that's the space that we want to get in. You can also use this time to refine your pitch, your messaging, something that is not easy when you get into interviews and you start having to answering questions about what it is you do, how your expertise translates. This is that time for that. All this is great. You still have to have the right packaging. This fills the time, but again, it keeps you sane and it can solve some of the issues that you may have going forward. This isn't something to sell your soul to. I wouldn't advocate giving 40 hours a week of your free time to something. I wouldn't even advocate giving 20 or 30 hours a week of your free time. Have a balance, prioritize what you need to prioritize, which if in this case is finding work, do that. But give yourself some freedom to do a few other things that won't hinder your process. All right. The mental health aspect is important. A story, we'll say that. I got the story at the end this time, is there was a 17-year-old I met at a event that I was at, and what they were saying was they are applying to so many different things. They're just getting rejected. It's very demoralizing. Again, create some opportunities for yourself. I would like to think that most of us are smart and creative enough to do so. And what I told them was, look, you're going to be fine. Right? It's the market right now, and you are not having the time that you thought you were going to have, probably because of the experience issue. But that is where you can, again, start to control some of the space that you put yourself in, right? There is a space for everybody. We all fit somewhere. Finding it is just increasingly difficult. And if you are able to create something for yourself, it's not that you have to hitch your whole wagon to it, but it'll help out in the interim, give you something to show others, and maybe it'll create something that you can have just on the back burner going down the line. We are all worth more than the work that we have in front of us. We just got to believe that, all right? There's an unprecedented level of pain today that we're seeing in this market, whether it's the shutdown, whether it's people being laid off, people wanting to find a new job but can't. Give yourself a little energy, give yourself a little bit of hope, because ultimately that is what's going to carry you to the next opportunity, okay? Like, subscribe, engage if anything resonates. Cannot save the world. Never going to try to save the world. But again, as always, if it can make things a little less terrible for you, that is what this is all about. So on that, Victory Monday. Go us. Go Jets. And we will see you next time.